Ah, hey there, audit and fraud, friends and family. Listen, okay, I've got this friend who spent years looking at this heavy, ornate gold watch sitting on his mantelpiece. It was his grandfather's, and he'd always been told that it was the family safety net. You know, the kind of thing that you sell if your world is kind of falling apart. Well, his world fell apart. And he finally took it to an appraiser, and he was expecting this life changing number to come out of this thing. But when the appraiser looked at it for about 10 seconds, he popped the box open, closed it, and then pushed it back across the counter. Now, my buddy knew what that look meant. That meant that it wasn't worth what he thought it was worth. So it may have looked like a fortune, but essentially it was just a paperweight. So, my question today for you all is, have you ever held something in your hands and you were certain that it was worth a fortune, but you found out that it was only a hollow shell? Because that's what we're going to talk about today, something that people thought was worth a fortune, and it turns out it wasn't worth much. So, like I always say, hang on tight because, well, this is another crazy one. Are you ready? Let's go.
Welcome to the Friday Fraudster podcast. Join them as they discuss sad, funny, and sometimes disturbing fraud stories. Be sure to catch past episodes on your favorite podcasting platform or go to www.fridayfraudster.com.
All right, you know what? I'm guessing this is Carol. I forgot that today was Friday the 13th. Partially because I really don't believe in it. I really don't care about it, but I forgot that it was Friday. Okay, so look, here's what we're gonna do now. We're just gonna bring up Christine. Thomas is on vacation, and Stephanie, who's in the chat, actually is working hard today. So she was gonna be here, but she said I can't because I'm working too hard. And I said, oh yeah, that's right. You have a job. We
I have a job.
yeah, but you're the boss. I mean, you know.
I do have a boss. He's just
I,
very nice.
I mean, you do, but you also call the shots in your department.
True, true.
Yeah. So, back to the question I asked. I'm going to ask you, Christine. Have you ever had something that you thought was really, really valuable, and then you found out it wasn't worth what you thought it was worth?
I mean, I'm sure when I was younger, um, I had this like metal. It's gonna sound so petty. I had this like metal handmade ship, and I thought it was like worth thousands of dollars. It was probably worth like the metal it was made out of. Um, I mean, are you talking like I always, whenever that question, I always think of like Antique Roadshow is what I think of.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be $1 trillion thing, but possibly, possibly.
Yeah, nothing else that I really think of. What about you?
Ooh, I'm gonna get to that. Yeah. So okay. So Carol, what about you? Stephanie, what about you? And then my man Gabe. Gabe, no, it's Memorex. Gabe said, "Is it live?" No, it's Memorex. Gabe, we really gotta get on the phone, man. I need to head up your way soon. So, uh, and Gabe says, "Is it Friday already?" Not only is it Friday, Gabe, it's Friday the 13th. What do you think about that? You believe in that? So let me ask Gabe. Gabe, the question that I ask the audience is, have you ever had something that you thought was valuable? And then when you looked into it, you found out it wasn't worth what you thought it was worth. So let me tell you, when I was a kid, I was fascinated with Star Wars. Well, I still am. I mean, hold on. Let me see. This little guy just sits here right with me at all times. He's up here on the shelf and he just stays with me. So when I was young, I was fascinated with Star Wars, right? And I still have a lot of my Star Wars stuff. I thought that it was going to be worth a whole lot of money. Like, for example, I still have the original Millennium Falcon. And I thought that the good old Millennium Falcon was going to be worth a whole lot. Well, unbeknownst to me, it's probably not worth as much as I thought it was going to be worth. And Christine has just disappeared. I don't know what happened to her, but she just 100% disappeared on us. My guess is her internet just went out, but let me just check to make sure that it is Christine and not me. I think I'm still alive because Gabe is responding. So Gabe said his Pogs and his Pokemon cards. Well, Gabe, hold on though, man. I thought that Pokemon cards were actually worth a lot. I thought those were worth a lot of money. But I really did think that my Millennium Falcon and also my Slave One ship, that's Boba Fett ship, I thought that those two things were going to be worth a whole lot of money. Man, I was banking on retiring on those two things alone. But, you know, alas, I had to face the real world and they weren't worth as much as I thought they were going to be worth. Lisa, you wrong. You're so wrong. Hold on, let's break this. Okay, so Christine, I don't know if you heard, but I was telling them how I thought I was going to retire off my Star Wars collection, and Gabe is saying that his Pogs and his Pokemon cards, he thought those were going to be worth a lot, and you just wrong, Lisa. She said, "I hope you don't have a Cabbage Patch dog." Oh, this is when I need my soundboard. Um, okay, so Carol is saying no, she hasn't had anything like that happen to her, but she said she has a whole box of still in the package toys from McDonald's. All those Happy Meals. Yeah, you know what? I used to think those were going to be worth a lot too. So, okay, as a teenager, I worked at Burger King and we had a lot of different toys that would come through. Some of them were Simpson dolls and all kinds of stuff. I eventually thought that those were going to be worth something, but alas, they weren't worth anything either. Now, Stephanie, those might actually be worth something. Stephanie says she has a whole bunch of baseball cards from the mid 1980s. Wait a minute. You know what else, too? I'm going to get off tangent just a little bit, but Stephanie's husband went to the Super Bowl. You got to tell us how that went. So next week we expect an update on what the Super Bowl was like.
Sorry, I'm back and I'm catching up on the Pokemon or the Cabbage Patch, the Pogs, McDonald's Happy Meal toys. What was yours? I didn't get to see it. Right when you were about to show it.
Oh well, no, no, no. I was saying that I was a huge Star Wars fan, and I was showing my bobblehead stormtrooper.
Did anybody say Beanie Babies?
Nobody said Beanie Babies. Mm. But what this goes to show us though is there are a lot of things in life that we think are extremely valuable. And then when we start to look under the hood, we discover that they are worthless, that, well, we actually own a bunch of junk. And so that brings us to today's story. Ah, I
Dun.
almost don't want to talk about this one. Um,
Well, nothing we ever talk about is warm and fuzzy and feeling and good stories.
Yeah, but this one hits a little close to home for me. I'm having feelings of nostalgia. And I'll tell you why. After I introduce the story, I'll tell you why. So the company we're talking about today is First Brands Group. They're based in Cleveland, Ohio, and they grew really, really fast by just gobbling up every automotive brand you've ever heard of. So if you've never heard of First Brands, they provide auto parts, aftermarket auto parts for a lot of things that we have. Your oil filter in your car is probably made by one of the brands that falls up under some first brands. That's just how big they are. Now, the CEO, Patrick James, and his brother, Edward James, they needed cash in order to keep the company running. So what they did was they did something called factoring. Now, my accountants, they're going to know what factoring is. But for my people that aren't accountants, just, you know, I'm going to explain it to them. So my accountants, don't laugh at the definition that I'm going to give here because you got to make sure that the show is inclusive of everyone. So essentially what they did was they sold their invoices. Here's what factoring is. If you have some invoices that are out and you know the money is coming in, you can go to the bank, give them those invoices and say, hey, look, I got this money coming in from this company. I want you to give me the cash now. This company is good for it. They're going to pay me. Now, this is nothing new. Businesses have been doing this for a very long time. However, here's what allegedly these brothers did. They factored the same invoices to multiple banks. That's kind of illegal, right? It's so okay. Let me just give an example of what that's like. That would be like selling your car to three different people on the same day and hoping that they don't all show up at your house at once to pick up the car. That would be what that's like. So that's kind of bad, right? Would
Well, yeah, difference is with a car you've got it titled. With factoring you don't. I don't know.
mm,
File a UCC on factoring of your invoices?
oh, that's true. I don't know. Now, Lisa said she uses payroll factoring. So that sounds pretty criminal and it sounds pretty bad, right? Because if you think about it, at some point that signals a bigger problem because at some point you're going to have to pay the banks back. And if you obtain more cash than you actually have coming in, that could be a huge problem, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You ever seen that before? You ever seen a company get in trouble for doing that before?
No, but the industry I'm in, we don't do factoring of invoices because we're in banking.
Yeah, yeah.
I
So
mean,
check
but
this.
happen with could somebody pledge collateral to multiple? Yes.
Oh, okay. So how would they do? Never mind. We won't get into that just yet. Okay. Okay. So listen, on January the 29th of this year, the DOJ, the Department of Justice, unsealed the indictment on these brothers. So this wasn't just a rough patch that they were having in their business that they needed to have cash for, like a quick fix. This was a multi-billion-dollar mirage. What ended up happening was in late 2025, they actually went bankrupt. They reported in the bankruptcy 9 billion with a B dollars in liabilities. Now, based on that $9 billion factor in liabilities, how much cash do you think they actually had on hand?
Cash on hand. And they had 9 billion.
In liabilities. Let me also mention that they had 9 billion in net annual sales worldwide. A $5 billion company is not a small company, but to have 9 billion in assets based on a 5 billion annual sales, that's pretty significant. And so what this means is since they declared bankruptcy, is they
Mhm.
need to actually pay that 9 billion in liabilities off. So now 5 billion in sales, you're right here, 9 billion in liabilities right here. You just declared bankruptcy, so you need money to pay off those liabilities. How much cash do you think they had on hand? Anybody want to guess? Lisa is saying zero.
And I'm trying to get out of my banking head because when we say cash on hand, like we literally mean cash. I don't know if you're also talking like did they have a lot of their assets like sitting in investments that they could access? Otherwise, I'd agree with Lisa. If it's cash, they got nothing.
Look, okay.
Don't tell me they're overdrafted. Please don't tell me
They were not overdrafted, but at some point you still have to have a few million in cash equivalents, right? So I'm talking when I say cash, I don't necessarily mean cash on hand. I mean cash on hand and maybe cash and cash equivalents that could be converted into cash within the next 60 to 90 days, right? So short-term investments, things like that. How much do you think they actually had in cash?
Well, I'm guessing it's going to be less than 9 billion. If you're a good person that runs a good business, you're going to have well over 9 billion, especially if that's what you're supposed to be bringing in every year.
Yeah, yeah.
What did they have? Don't tell me it's like $320.82.
Thankfully, it's not that bad, right?
Okay.
But they had $12 million in cash. Now, I want you to understand, you got 9 billion in liabilities and only 12 million in cash. Now, now, let's really get just a little bit deeper here, though. When you look at what their inventory was, though, it was things like I said, the air filters, the Fram air filters. Those are the best. Those are the best. I'm sorry, oil filters. Those are the best filters that you can have in your car, and this is the best supplier of those. But those are low dollar ticket items. So most of their inventory is not expensive things.
No. It's just like I'm trying to imagine you've got less than 1%. Less than 1% of your debt. Less than 1% of your sales annually is what you have access to.
Yep. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting, at least in my opinion. Oh wait, hold on.
So I'm guessing that 9 billion in liabilities is part of them doing the factoring, correct?
There you go.
Okay.
There you go. So some of that was a part of the factoring, which means this money is not going to be recovered.
No.
I mean, how can it be? There you go. Lisa's saying 12 million, that's like zero. Okay, you were saying that too. That's less than 1%. Right. Right. Oh, now Matthew asked a really good question, and this one I got to dig into my notes because I don't have it by memory. What was their net income? 9 billion in revenue could just be 100 million net. Now, obviously, we know that it was significantly less than the 9 billion, right? So, actually, now that he's asked that, let me look it up real quick. Um, because that one stat I didn't have memorized, but it's an important point, right?
Said it did not disclose any net income figures associated with the period when it was
Ooh,
more than 9 billion in liabilities were uncovered.
ooh, that's bad then, right? Now, here's the thing where it gets even more interesting to me. They had over 26,000 employees worldwide. So no one noticed. No one in the accounting group noticed. No one noticed
Was
that
it
these
just
things.
the way that the company was set up? Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes your company can get so big. Sometimes you can have such a flat organization that you have individuals touching minuscule pieces here and there that they don't get enough information to connect those dots.
Ah, there we go.
I'm making the
Okay.
assumption. I don't know if that's true.
Oh, that's very true.
Okay.
That's why I asked the question. So, okay, okay. In order to keep insiders in the company, like the staff accountants and the people who would actually see this from catching this, they created this inner circle. Um, and so they kept the banks from talking to each other. But the other thing they did allegedly was they literally restricted financial emails so that low level accounting employees would not even get email correspondence from the banks.
Ah.
Because if you think about it, if you're doing the books, when you do your reconciliation, it's going to show that you factored the same receivables multiple times. It's going to show that you got more cash on hand than you have invoices in receivables because you got to do your reconciliation at some point, right?
Right. I guess here's my question is, did they not have a bank or somebody do an audit of their financials? So I don't know a
Ooh.
lot about manufacturing, so I'm just going to put that out there. But I know my sister is the head of accounting for a HVAC sheet metal type company, and their bank does an audit of them every year.
So you're asking the right questions here. Check this out. This is where it gets even worse, or this is where it gets ridiculous. So one of the lenders got suspicious and wanted to do a physical inventory audit. They had loaned money against this inventory, so they wanted to do an audit of it. Well, here's what the indictment is alleging. Here's what the feds are alleging. The feds allege that the brothers rented a warehouse for 1 week and filled it with empty boxes. And then they hired, allegedly, temporary workers to move the empty boxes around on forklifts while the auditors from that bank walked through to validate that inventory.
They are taking a big risk I mean, did the auditor just pick up a box?
You know?
Because I do branch audits, right? And when you've got boxes of coin, we look at the boxes of coin to make sure the box is full.
Yep.
I wonder what those people that got hired were thinking.
And maybe they thought they were actors acting in a movie.
Oh man, that is crazy.
Right? I mean, it's possible though. There we go. Stephanie says, like, meet the Fockers, the circle of trust. And then see, these are all the Lisa's saying they ask for financials when you request a draw. They should. They probably did, and they probably faked those financials. Here's the other thing too. So this isn't a publicly traded company; it's a private company too. So
Mhm.
that probably came into play some.
Well, that's the thing. Like my sister works for a private company. They're
Ah,
not like, you know what I'm saying? They're not some big, huge company. And maybe they have to get that audit done because they might have a line of credit or something like that at that bank. But yeah.
mm. And see, Lisa's hitting on the big point because, like, seriously, when I used to do inventory audits, I would look at the inventory, but I would also pick up something, inspect it, open a box or two. I used to carry a box cutter with me just in case I had to cut open a box. Lisa's saying randomly check certain things. Absolutely.
Well, and from our perspective, when you did that, it wasn't because you thought the company was lying about the number of products. You probably did that because of potential internal theft and product walking away. Like there's more than just one reason to double check the inventory.
for sure, right?
I just can't believe they did that. I wonder how many boxes they bought.
Here's the thing that disappoints me about this one, though, in all seriousness. When I was young, I used to work on my cars. That was back before all the cars were electronic and you could actually kind of fix your own car.
Hmm.
So I remember my first car. I'm not gonna say what it was. It was a real old car, and it wasn't a nice looking car, but it was mine. And I remember when I first got it, uh, it broke the first day, and I was like, "Oh no, my car!" But I had a buddy who lived around the street. His dad owned his own auto repair shop, and so my buddy knew how to work on cars. And he came over. He was like, "Hey man, what do you need?" I'm like, I don't know. So we took a look at it, and it was something real simple. It was just a starter. So the starter needed to be replaced. And I remember we walked up to the auto parts store that was close to where we lived. It was a pretty long walk, but it was maybe like 2 miles. We walked up to the store. The starter cost something like $25. I remember I bought the starter, brought it back home, and he and I sat in the street and fixed my car. And so a lot of other things that happened to it, we ended up fixing those too. But some of the parts were some of these were from, companies like this. Yeah, Lisa said it was a hoopty. That's right. It was my hoopty. My hoop. Okay. Not gonna, but yeah. And so I hmm, it just kind of hits you right there that a
Yeah.
company would do something so bad, especially when you consider when you look at that kind of work. I find most of the time, blue collar work, they tend to be the most honest workers around, you know? Um, and that just, it just disappoints me that some of the corporate bull has made it into the blue collar workforce.
Mhm.
But here's the thing. So this company, it grew and it grew by acquiring other companies. This is what baffles me. For all practical purposes, they provide products that we all need because we all have cars, right?
Mhm.
And they need to be fixed regularly. Couldn't you have just taken out a loan or gotten some investors in order to facilitate the growth that you needed? And so now here's the greed factor. Let's talk about this because I would have thought that all of this money would have gone to fund the expansions, but nope. Here's what the dudes allegedly ended up doing. While the company was defaulting on its debt, allegedly the James brothers, they weren't flying commercial. These dudes had 3 private jets owned by the company, but they were used exclusively for personal travel.
So they weren't even trying to save the company. They were trying to live a lifestyle that they couldn't afford.
Yeah,
They were
and
playing
that's disappointing. Stephanie said, unless you work at a port, those workers round their hours up all the time. Okay, wait. If it wasn't bad enough what I just said about the 3 private jets, check this out. Allegedly now, allegedly one of the jets was used to fly someone's dog from Ohio to Florida because the CEO didn't want the pet to deal with the stress of a car ride from Ohio to Florida.
okay. It's a little excessive. Be cheaper to just get a dog sitter.
Right? I
Now, this isn't the first brand, like when you see the first brand's commercials, is it?
No, you would never see this group because like First Brands is for lack of a better term, the holding company, and they sell a bunch of different auto parts. But what you might be familiar with is, let's see if I can pull up a picture of
What that looks like.
um, of a few of their products.
And I did find out you can file a UCC1 financing statement against a business when entering an invoice factoring agreement.
Oh wow, very interesting. Very, very interesting. Oh man, my mouse has just stopped working at the absolute worst time ever. Um, so let's see. Many of you, well, you know what? To answer your question, you all would never have seen the brand called First Brands. You would have seen the things that they actually, the other sub brands that they actually own. I'm trying to pull up uh, one right now. So, for example, most people would use a Fram oil filter, and here it is.
Okay.
That's so like AutoZone has the Fram oil filter, some of the best around. Like seriously. And let's see what else.
Airtex, Carter, Anco, Trico, Autolite, spark plugs.
Yeah, those are good spark plugs too. Yeah. So I guess in my head I'm kind of confused about the fraud as a whole because the company's products were moving. They're valuable. We need them. We rely on them. They actually are good quality. It's not like this is a terrible company with terrible products. They produce very good products. So if what is alleged is true, this has to be just 100% greed.
Yeah. I mean, did other than the plane ride and the private jets, what else were they spending their money on?
So now, here's the other thing that they were doing though. They also had shell companies. So they were falsifying sales. Allegedly. So for example, First Brands would sell, say, $10 million in parts to a shell company that they secretly controlled. That shell company would then pay First Brands using a loan provided by First Brands. So on the books, it looked like a $10 million sale, looked like revenue, but in reality, no parts ever moved. No new money ever made it into the building. So they also use shell companies to overinflate the sales figures.
Well, that's the easiest way to move money around.
Yeah, yeah.
I found out what he spent money on.
You found out what he spent money on. Uh-oh. What did he spend money on?
To fund his and his family's lavish lifestyle, which included 7 homes, 17 cars, transferred 8 million to his son-in-law's wellness company, 2 million for James's family office, at least 3 million towards the rent of his New York City townhouse, half a million to his personal chef, and another $150,000 for a celebrity personal trainer.
Oh, hmm.
And the First Brands executive, Andy Brumbergs, revealed a guilty plea for his role in the scheme. And he's cooperating with the government.
So
So,
now that is the executive that flipped. So here's the deal with him. He was the one that actually kept the double books. So
oh,
he reportedly had a hidden spreadsheet on a personal encrypted drive titled the reality gap. And so he mapped out the difference between what they told the banks and what they actually had.
Okay. Being smart about it.
Yeah. So when the Fed seized his computer, they didn't have to like reconstruct everything. He already had it there on the secret drive. So yeah, he's the one that flipped on them. But wait a minute. Here's the thing that really seems very interesting. That list of things that he spent the money on, obviously extremely lavish. I'm just wondering, like I don't know. Hmm, I just don't think I could ever do something like that because I would be thinking about the 26,000 people that are now probably without jobs or that were relying on me and my company. Um,
Yeah.
I, hmm.
Yeah, that's just crazy.
Here's the other thing. When they stopped paying their own suppliers, the production of the FRAM filters and the trico parts slowed down. And so it caused a shortage in late 2025. Also, think about the small independent mechanics that couldn't get their filters. They had to tell customers that, well, you can't get your oil changed, or they had to use inferior filters. Because, in all seriousness, these are excellent parts that they have. They really are.
Well, I'm just like, so for how long, however long that this went, right? Things start going into default. Do these individual businesses, no matter how large or small, do they now have to worry about these banks calling them and saying, hey, we have an invoice that you were supposed to pay to First Brands. Now you owe us. It's 460,000. And they're going, no, 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 no. Our invoice was for 8,700. And then you got two more financial institutions calling you saying, hey, we're making good on our, like, do you think there was an impact that way too?
Oh, for sure. But I don't think the actual number on the invoice will be wrong. I think there will be multiple banks claiming the same invoice.
That's what I thought at first too. But in the DOJ, one of them said like they would submit one for the actual invoice cost, which was like for 8,700. Then the second one, they redid the invoice to a new bank. All right, here. June 2025, after invoicing a customer $8,900 in automotive parts, First Brand sold to Factor One what purported to be the same customer invoice, but it falsely claimed the invoice amount to be $17,800. 3 days later, yeah, 3 days later, First Brand sold the same customer invoice to another third party, falsely claiming the invoice amount was $463,734.
How did I miss that part? Oh, wow.
Yeah, so in total, third-party factors now hold approximately 2.7 billion of fake accounts receivable. So could you imagine being that small company that's going, I haven't purchased $500,000 in products in the last 5 years. What are you talking about? My invoices that total? Like, how do you prove that? Where's that? You know what I'm saying? Where's that source of truth? And at what point can these smaller companies get these banks off their backs because they don't owe them that money?
Yeah, well, I think the smaller company will have a source of proof coming out of their general ledger system, but the big fight is going to be who gets what, and this is where the dates are going to come into play because the first one at the accurate amount that can prove, that they were first by date order and that the amount is accurate is probably the one that gets to claim, the money. Oh wow. Oh, this is worse than I thought. I missed that part. I thought that they were just replicating. I completely missed that in my research. Oh wow, thank you, Christine.
No,
Whoa.
there's a lot of research on here. There's a lot. There's a lot going on.
Oh wow.
So like I just sit here and go, I would hate to be those small companies.
Yeah. One. they are just now finding out what the impact is going to be because now, mind you, they filed for bankruptcy late last year and they were indicted early this year. So all of this is new. Um, so I'm assuming a lot of these companies are probably hiring lawyers and trying to figure out how to get themselves in the absolute best position possible.
Right.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And how long was this going on? Why do I feel like it said 2018?
Um, I think I might be looking at next week's, but I think it was just this year. I mean, last year, sorry. Let me take a look. I can just do a really quick query, but I think it was just this year. Um, oh, no, you're right. 2018. Yeah. Holy.
7 years?
Oh, and here's what was happening. Every time the ghost debt got too big, they would go and buy another company. So, like for example, Fram they just bought in 2019, which makes sense because, like I said, everybody remembers Fram filters. But here's another one, Autolite. Autolite was another good company as well. They bought them in 2019 as well.
Yeah.
Autolite was the spark plug company. I
Okay.
remember replacing my spark plugs, and it was always Autolite. That's what you got. Um, oh man. So yeah, it began in 2018 to about 2020, where they began using special purpose entities to move debt off the books. So they transferred hundreds of millions of dollars to Patrick's personal trust. But then here's what ended up happening though. In mid 2025, they tried to get a $6.2 billion refinancing deal. And that's when it really started to fall apart. Then when they couldn't get that financing deal, they had to file for Chapter 11, and that was in September of last year. Then after that, forensic auditors found that 2.3 billion had just disappeared.
Could you imagine being that financial institution that they went to asking for this 6 billion, and the one person's like, "Yeah, this just doesn't feel right. I think we need to deny it." And then this comes out how soon after that that they're going, "Glad I made that decision."
You know what? Here's what I was wondering though. Um, did someone at that financial institution that rejected that loan uh, actually turn in information?
Could be. Could. See if yeah, I think I want to find out how did you say how they got found out? How did it come up?
I did not say.
Do you know?
I think I do, um, but I can't find it in my notes, so I was just moseying right along.
You were right. It said it was a cascade of red flags emerging from lenders, missing funds, irregular financial reports, and then ultimately the formal federal investigation.
That's what I thought I remembered reading. Because this one has so much, and every time you turn the corner, you were like, "Wow, no, this could not be happening." But so yeah, so what ended up happening was due diligence from the banks, the potential lenders that they had. They actually did their due diligence, and that due diligence helped.
Yeah. Department of Justice, FBI, IRS, and Homeland Security launched a coordinated probe.
Yeah. So now you got to think about the control failures, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they were a private company, so obviously SEC or anything like Sarbanes-Oxley would not have caught it. But the first big thing I think were the shadow books, right? The falsified financial reporting. But if they were a private company, who would actually notice and who would care? Because I'm sure the brothers were on the board and ran the board.
Yeah, I just don't like what other controls. So it said that they did have UCC filings existed, but they were flawed or misleading.
Okay, so basically though, when you do it, let's talk about this for a minute. Because when you do UCC filings,
Mhm.
that's that who does that go to?
So it goes to your state filing. So it's normally any type of asset. And Stephanie, please correct me if I'm wrong, because it's been a while since I've been in the lending sector. Anything that really doesn't have a VIN number or like a title tied to it. So, like your boats, trailers for your boats, your motors on your boats, those all get listed by serial numbers on a UCC. So it's literally like you just type an amount, you can put in a value, and then there's a box that you just sit here and go, this is like the identifying information of this asset. And this is how much it's valued at. And then you total up the total value of it. Then you usually have to pay like a flat fee. So
Filing fee,
don't
yeah.
ask me. So like Tennessee, when I did that, it was like $11.50 for each filing. But then like the first $3,500 of the value, you didn't have to pay a percentage. And then you assess like 0.00125 to the total value after that initial $3,500 was free. And then that was your UCC filing. That's what you had to pay to the state.
And then with that filing though, other organizations can look up what has been filed.
They should be able to, correct.
Yeah.
Or like when you would go to pledge it, I'm trying to just remember how we would do that, how we would search that up.
Yeah.
But that's why it's making me wonder when they're saying it was flawed, it somehow then had to be in that description of that invoicing that didn't tie them together. So that's maybe how they got duplicative liens, I guess.
Yeah, and I was trying to figure it out. And here's one thing that I thought. I think you hit it on the head. When it's something big, you got the serial number or some sort of unique identifier. But when you're talking about such small dollar items, then you're not going to have a serial number, but you still should be able to tie it back to an individual company or somehow the key indicator was missing or flawed, or they found a way around that. My guess is because it's not a large item and you don't have like a serial number or something like that. But yeah, so someone said correct in what you were saying, Christine, and I think that's Carol, but I can't see it over here. Now Lisa is saying, think about this. This was the funny part. Also, you got to pay back the factoring company, right?
Yep.
But what did I say earlier though? When it came time to them for them to start paying back, they would just go buy another company. And so then they would falsify records and all that other good stuff. And Lisa's saying she always paid hers back quickly and to avoid interest. So that was the other thing I was thinking about. Like, what at some point, even if you don't pay back the principal, you got to pay back the interest. And Stephanie says, yep, you had to value the boat, the trailer, the motor separately, but you could still trace those items based on serial number or some sort of number. But when we're talking about small dollar amounts, how does that actually work? What is the one thing that you use to tie them all together as a unique identifier. And maybe that's the loophole in the system that they found.
Well, here's one of your internal controls that was likely a failure. The lenders lacked perfecting those liens. So that is something we do right. So it's making sure your titling or your lien is perfected on that after everything is done. Well, if it's not perfected, somebody else can come in and put a lien on it. Um, yeah, perfective liens or have undocumented claims. So there's 3 essential elements for a UCC1 filing for factoring invoices: debt collector's legal name, secured party, and then the collateral description, which is the most critical part. So required before factoring, all accounts receivable, whether now existing or hereafter arising.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, so for those who don't know, which most of our audience does, right? But let's talk about what that is. Perfecting a lien is just saying I'm the lien holder, and you actually have to file it. And if you fail to file it, the first person to actually do the filing is the lien holder of record. And there's an old saying when it comes to lien. I'm trying to remember. First to file is first in line, or something like that. Stephanie might know what that saying is. I can't remember it all the way, but so essentially, even if you were the first person that they went to, if
Mhm.
you fail to actually do the filing and somebody else filed before you are just out of luck because they actually filed the correct paperwork with the state.
Yeah, no different
Or
than like your mechanics liens.
there you
Um,
go. Yeah.
or during construction, like there's a risk that if there's a financial institution that is financing the construction and then they have to refile on the deed, um, after it's completely built, is okay, well, what if your contractor was using subcontractors and your contractor didn't pay the subcontractors? Those subcontractors probably have a lien on your property before you even move into your house.
So now this is a good point. And I think this might be Carol again. Not only do you have to file it, the state or county actually has to accept it. So here's what they ended up doing. Here's how they gamed the UCC system. Um, you have to describe the collateral. And so when the James brothers would describe the collateral, what they would do is they would use vague or overlapping descriptions. For example, all inventory in warehouse A for bank A and stuff like that. Now, the other thing is they had these ghost entities. So remember I said earlier they created special purpose entities. So now bank A would perfect the lien against First Brands Group, but then bank B would perfect a lien against one of the ghost entities, not realizing that it was the same underlying asset. So that's one way that they game the system. So they understood the UCC, the Uniform Commercial Coding System. Yeah, yeah. Hmm. And yeah, this is correct too. If the lien is not perfected for the financial company, basically it's an unsecured loan. Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect those liens, people. Although in this instance, I don't think it really helped. Other than could they collect those invoice money from those, as long as it's what they really owe.
Well, and I guess that's going to be the other issue though, because the amount really owed is going to be in doubt. Because let's think about this. Okay, now most of us are auditors or financial people, and we think logically. So logically, if I figured out that I've gotten screwed over, and somebody provides me with enough evidence to show that the $15,000 I think I'm owed is only seven, I'm gonna try and go after you for the seven. But that's not what emotionally led people do. Here's what's gonna end up happening. These people are gonna fight for what they believe is the amount that they're owed. And the company is going to have to fight for the amount that's actually owed. And in the end, lawyers are going to be the only people that make money because they're going to tie it up in court for years. That's what's really going to happen.
Yep.
Jeez, this is sad. It's because Hmm.
I mean, their sentences look like they could be in there for the rest of their life.
Yeah, yeah. Because what is it? One guy's already pleaded guilty, and that was the guy who told. Um, and then let me look. What were the other two? The other two haven't pleaded yet, have they?
No, but
Who?
so one of the brothers is getting charges for continuing financial crimes, conspiracy to commit wire fraud affecting a financial institution and bank. That's pretty hefty. Wire fraud affecting a financial institution times 2, bank fraud, wire fraud affecting a financial institution count 6, bank fraud. So he's looking at his potential maximum sentences are life, 30 years, 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 and 20 years, with a minimum sentence of 10.
Okay, so wait. So one of the brothers is actually out on a $50 million bond and is subject to electronic monitoring. The other brother is awaiting trial and out on a $10 million bond. And the guy who cooperated, the numbers guy, his potential sentence is 10 to 15 years. He did the guilty plea and he's a cooperating witness.
12, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 110. Well, that's good because he was facing 230 years for all of his charges.
Right. 10 to 15 is the cakewalk compared to what he was.
Right. And it looks like that's what the other brother also had. One of the brothers has one of the sentences as life, the other one isn't. And I think that's because his sentence of continuing financial crimes enterprise is the life sentence.
Oh,
If I'm reading this right.
huh. Now that's
That's the
interesting.
maximum. I'm gonna just double check. But that's the only charge I can find different between the two.
That is very interesting. Okay, now here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, continuing financial crimes enterprise. It's ooh, it's actually worse than RICO. So RICO is Racketeering, Influenced, and Corrupt Organizations Act. Um, so what he was charged with is kind of like the financial version of the drug kingpin statute, right?
I was gonna say, is this like the mob sort of thing? Like if you're running a mob, this is what you're getting charged with.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and similar. Well, okay. So with RICO, it requires you to prove that there was an enterprise that is distinct from the defendants themselves. But the continuing financial crimes enterprise, that charge focuses specifically on a leader of a series of frauds affecting a financial institution.
Well, I hate to do this to you. This hour went by fast.
Oh boy.
I got a job I gotta go do.
Oh, you sure do. You know what? And on that note, I've actually got something that I got to do too. So thank you all for joining us this week on the Friday Crosser. Goodness, this was crazy. We'll see you next week.
Bye.